Hello, you are most welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to Tuesday Night Anatomy with Daniel Okwan. Today's section, it is one of the power behind the voice that I'm going to discuss with you. Now, in the society, especially in some part of our country, a lot of people like cursing people, okay, because of some mere misunderstanding, okay. Yes, and usually the evidence that indeed, okay, the curse has worked, okay, is the presence of either pedal edema or let's say that kind of ascites in the abdomen. So a lot of fluid accumulated in the belly region, and of course in the feet. Well, sometimes facial edema, okay, those things, okay, are suggestive that the curse has worked. But my friend, there is something that I want to also, tackle. Well, it is not surprising that, of course, the gods know the vital organs to affect. Because interestingly, for us to say that, someone is having facial edema, ascites, anasaka, that kind of, pedal edema, wherever, okay, then it is because there are some important organs which, have been compromised one way or the other. Now, we live in a country where people do not really, more often do, this kind of screening, okay. They are there until they are, they are struck down by, of course, that kind of disorder. And that is why we always, attribute, these things to the gods. But I don't have a problem. It could be that the gods know the kind of organs to attack. My friend, precisely the important organ where, I'm interested in talking about should be the liver. Now, whenever your liver, about 75% of the functional parenchyma by way of the hepatocytes, okay, have been damaged, okay, then what will happen is that, yes, it's likely you are going to see this kind of edema almost everywhere. Okay, that's one thing. I will explain why. The reason is that the liver produces one protein, and that important protein, we call them plasma proteins. And these plasma proteins, precisely the most important one is albumin. And that albumin is supposed to do something which I will tell you is supposed to maintain something we call plasma, oncotic pressure. And it is that pressure which works against something we call hydrostatic pressure. Now, you know that the blood is full of water. And so by way of hydrostatic pressure, that one will be going into, of course, in between the cells, running between the capillaries and, of course, going in between the cells. Okay? And so in order to prevent that increased hydrostatic pressure, God created the liver, and one of the functions of the liver is to produce plasma proteins, precisely albumin, so that it serves as the force impeding, okay, that hydrostatic pressure for for that edema to happen. Okay, that's one thing. Now the other one is that there could be a kidney problem. Now whenever there's a kidney problem, for instance, now we have something we call filtration barrier in the kidney. It's supposed to ensure that you don't filter out your proteins out. But there are some situations where, of course, the kidney is damaged to the extent that, yes, it has become so porous, okay, so that the filtration barrier is compromised, okay, leading to, of course, a lot of these kind of plasma proteins, albumin, leaking out and, of course, you urinating them away. Okay, that's another thing. Okay, so if someone also has a kidney problem, then it is manifested by this kind of, edema that we are talking about, swelling around the areas. Okay, now one thing I want to explain over here is that, now assuming there's your capillary, okay, now whenever we say capillary is one of those blood vessels we are talking about. Now normally we have what we call arteries, we have what we call veins, and then important we have capillaries. Now capillaries are called the exchange vessels. So it's at that level that, of course, exchange is going to take place between, of course, the blood and, of course, the cells of the body. Now one thing that we know is that, yes, these kind of things I'll be doing them in no time. I'll be explaining all these ones with PowerPoint, but this time I want to quickly explain something briefly for you. Now this is, let's say there's a capillary. Then what will happen is that, because it's going to come from this area, we are going to have the arterial end, and then we are going to have the venous end, because capillaries will arise from, of course, divisions of what we call arterioles, which are the smallest form of what we call arteries, okay, and of course they will be drained generally by what we call venules, okay. So this is the venous end, this is the arterial end. Now what is happening is that there will be that pressure, the fluid that is passing through the blood vessel, the pressure the water is moving with, that is what you call the hydrostatic pressure. Now normally for the arterial end, it is likely that it's going to be greater over here, and then of course the oncotic pressure too, also because of the plasma proteins by way of albumin in there to be impeding it. Now normally we've seen that on average, okay, the net, when you look at the difference between the hydrostatic pressure and the oncotic pressure at the arterial end of the capillary, yes, it's around 10 millimeters of mercury, and that of the venous end is also around 10 millimeters of mercury. That is under normal conditions, so that we don't expect that if there's any fluid over here, it will be collected back, and of course it joins the systemic circulation. That's one thing that we are talking about. But everything is not perfect. And so what will happen is that there could be a point where, of course, maybe we are getting about 13 millimeters of mercury, we are getting about 10 at the venous end, okay. And what will happen is that there will be fluid, okay, in the cells, okay. There will be, it means that the hydrostatic pressure was greater, and so we have some kind of fluid in the cells, okay, between the cells, and that will lead to edema. But most of the times, okay, individuals, you don't see this kind of edema taking place. Why? Because God has also equipped us with something we call lymphatic vessels. So always I say that in a day, about 18 liters of blood is, arterial blood is pumped by the heart to all parts of the body, and through the venous system, about 15 liters is returned back to the heart. Now, usually about 3 liters will get inside the cells, and that's what we call the lymph. And this lymph will have to be collected, okay? And that's why we have lymphatic, vessels around. Help me to take it back also to the venous system, so that it joins the systemic circulation again. So in other words, we don't expect edema to take place. However, in situations you are having a liver problem, you are having a kidney problem, you've lost a lot of these proteins, or the proteins are not being produced, then what will happen is that your oncotic pressure is so low, the hydrostatic pressure has overcome that of the oncotic pressure, and that is why it will be manifested as what we call edema. Okay, so my friend, this what I want you to understand. Now sometimes too, it is not only the liver or the kidney, but it could also be the heart, and that's something we call congestive heart failure. So in congestive heart failure, what we call the ventricles, which are supposed to pump blood out of the heart, okay, they fail to do that. And when they fail to do that, it means that the blood is supposed to be received, okay, from the atria into the ventricles, okay, will have to be backlogged in what we call, especially the extremities, by way of of course the lower limb. Okay, that is what this kind of edema thing will really happen. So my friend, whenever you see someone with, of course, facial edema, with pedal edema, with edema in the hand, with edema or that kind of ascites, wherever, my friend, you don't have to attribute it to that kind of case that we talk about over here, because yes, well, I don't have a problem. It could be that, of course, the ghost that the case was sent to, okay, they were able to, of course, tell which organ they have to affect, okay, to lead to that kind of disorder that will be manifested. So my friends, I hope you find this meeting helpful. Yes, in future I'll be showing you all these things, the mechanisms in detail. I'm very grateful for your time this evening. Have a good night, all of you, and may the good Lord richly bless you. Amen.